In the space of 4 to 5 years, I'd been kept incredibly busy in writing and recording music, releasing one band album with Chris Throw and 2 solo offerings. I was definitely trying to stay as creative as I could, and with every new project, as well as trying to learn more and be a better songwriter, I would also have my own personal goals within making the albums that I wanted to work on. So to clarify, Headlights at Midnight was the first album with myself stepping up to the microphone and becoming the singer of a band. Without the Blue, I wanted to see if I could move forward as a solo act. And then finally, with Anything But Silent, I pushed myself to learn more about the recording process and try my hand at self-producing my own album. So the next plan I had was to try my hand at releasing my very first double-sided single. To get the backstory for this one, we have to go back to August-September time of 2017, around about the time that Anything But Silent was in full production. I was playing gigs in festivals all over the country, both as a solo act and accompanied with my backing band. I can't remember exactly when, but it was around about this time I received a message from Alan Greer, who invited me to be part of his makeshift band that he was putting together for the Stardust gig. Alan wanted to play a few covers, which was fine by me, with myself playing the guitar and singing, and Alan would be playing the keyboards and synths. So that night, myself and Alan played our short set of songs and played our part in raising funds for Stardust. This would also be the night that I would meet Ken Allardyce, who had mixed and mastered the Stardust charity single, as well as having worked with some very well-known bands and acts from all over the world. The really exciting thing for me with this meeting though, other than Ken being incredibly kind and chilled out, was that he had worked with some very well-known bands and acts that had shaped my musical outlook and are a massive influence on me, most notably the Goo Goo Dolls. He had worked on 2 of my favourite Goo Goo Dolls albums, Dizzy Up the Girl and Gutter Flower. You may remember from my previous episode, I had mentioned that the Goo Goo Dolls track Dizzy was a massive influence on one of my own songs. So it was pretty mind-blowing to meet someone who had a hand in making that album. A short while after the gig, Alan invited me through to his little studio for a catch-up and to master the now finished Anything But Silent tracks. Alan seemed impressed that I had tried my hand at the whole DIY approach, and he could see the development from previous releases. We also ended up meeting up with Ken at his studio, who again in turn had listened to my latest release. The feedback from both Alan and Ken was invaluable in moving forward. They both made suggestions and offered advice on where I could improve, what worked and what didn't, and where the next step could take me. But the main thing that stuck with me was, don't be afraid to experiment with sounds. I can't remember who suggested it first, but the idea came about of me working and recording a track with Alan at the helm as being the producer. As always, I'd been continually writing, so I'd been sitting on some new material and decided to put this new advice into practice. There were loads of things round about that time that needed to and did change. I ditched my normal live gigging setup and bought a new amp from my friend Phil Wild, and basically shelved my usual effects unit. Myself and Amy D had just bought our new house a few months previous, so as well as new gear to experiment with, I now had new surroundings to work in, which is my current little home studio setup. My band was also going through some changes too. Jack, my ever-faithful drummer, on both solo releases, on the recordings and the occasional live gigs, decided to step down, which was totally fine. He's still one of my most trusted friends, so I was now back to the stage where I needed a new drummer. Enter Dave Simpson. Dave joined my band just before we went on the Anything But Silent tour and performed gigs alongside me all across the country. I always felt really sorry for him as he joined the band and it was like, here's your live dates for the next 6 months. Once you've met Dave though, you'd be hard pressed to forget him. He's constantly making me laugh. So after the tour was finished and my batteries were finally recharged, myself and Alan set a date to head through and begin work on this first double-sided single. The song I had in mind was Just Like Before and would also be the debut for Dave playing drums on one of my songs. We began like normal with Dave recording the drums and getting the foundations of the track in the right place before moving forward. The song was pretty different to anything I had written before. yet it wasn't too much of a departure from my usual style. I had experimented more with sounds and styles, like both Alan and Ken had suggested, and using my effects pedal just to add slight variations in the sound throughout the song. It gradually grew and evolved quite a bit from the original demo that I had. There were lots of layers to this song, lots of variations and lots of textures throughout. Working alongside Alan gave me the great opportunity to approach recording from a totally different angle. He would go through his approach to recording, walking me through the process and showing me how he would do things. Alan would answer my questions about things and again make suggestions and alternative ways to approach making music.
It's really good. Oh, you're with me. I think it's, I don't know. No, I would say it's definitely a step in the right direction.
With this song I knew I'd have to be able to try new things and not be so overly precious and set on what I thought the song should be. The ending especially changed. I wrote the initial idea for the ending of the song, but I wasn't particularly happy with it. And Alan had mentioned that Ken had been down for a visit and just wanted to hear how the track was progressing. And between the two of them, came up with a structure for the ending of the song. The funny thing for me was, I was consciously thinking the song doesn't need a guitar solo. I came in the following week after Ken and Alan had worked on the track, and the first thing they suggested to me, it needs a guitar solo. The main thing I learned with Alan is, it doesn't matter how many attempts you need to get a take that's right for the song. Vocals were a massive element in this song, trying different approaches and layering them, harmonising and filling out the whole vocal scope. So I went back through some of my new songs I'd been working on, trying to find one that would be a good counter to Just Like Before, and up to that point I'd been playing a lot of gigs, mixing both acoustic shows and gigs with the full band, so I kind of thought maybe I should go for a more chilled out song. I had upgraded parts of my studio and this seemed the perfect time to put what I had learned to the test. This would be round about the time that I treated myself to a new acoustic guitar. I was also loaned an EBO and began to experiment with it, creating textures with soundscapes to potentially use it in one of my songs. Another light was the song that I basically ran with everything Alan had taken the time to show me, both in using Pro Tools and experimenting with sounds. I originally intended for it to be a straight acoustic track, little bits of EBO thrown in, but the further and further I got into the song, the more and more instrumentation I ended up adding in. It gradually became this very atmospheric sounding song that's completely different to anything I'd created in the past. Phil Wiles had a massive part to play in this song. I'd be constantly sending him ideas, trying different sounds and elements. He would then make suggestions as to what could work and what didn't. Just Like Before and Another Light would be mixed and mastered by Phil and was released as my first double-sided single on the 14th of August 2020. It was great to try and showcase both sides of my music, sandwiching a huge rock song with a more chilled out and atmospheric acoustic bass track. Both songs were greatly received, with some listeners getting in contact and believing this was some of my strongest material to date. Both tracks were played on radio worldwide, and it kept surprising me the further and further the song reached. The experimentation in both of these songs I would like to think are a huge step forward for me, not just in terms of sounds but in terms of growth as a songwriter. In moving forward, this experience showed me so much and I'm genuinely excited to show everyone what I have next up my sleeve.